What's happening, everybody? Welcome for joining us. Today, we are doing another exam study session with y'all, and it's about to go down. So I'm Dee Kumar. I help folks through our YouTube channel and various other methods to pass real estate examinations, mortgage finance examinations. So it is the goal of our channel and the goal of what we do to help people out. I've been doing this for, a long time. We're talking like almost 30 years. I've trained thousands and thousands and thousands of folks, and I've helped a lot of people pass these real estate exams, these mortgage finance exams. So I take pride in that. I know the content very, very well. Been a subject matter expert for a long time, and it's my job to help you get through this examination. So I've been hearing a lot from a lot of y'all that you're about to take the exam in, let's say, a week. Several of y'all are saying that you're going to take it at the end of the week. And then some of y'all are like taking it tomorrow. So what I wanted to do is do a brief high impact session here today that you can watch before your test and get the maximum amount of value out of it. Now, I'm live, so I want to make sure that everything is working. So I might look over my shoulder a little bit. I've got some stuff going, buttons going, things going on. So I want to make sure that I'm streaming properly. So I will just take a quick peek over. Since we are going live, things can happen. So just keep in mind that if it does, we will repost this video as well if you do miss it. If you're there live, you can sound off in the chat. That's awesome. I hope you're doing well. Tell me the state that you're taking your examination in. Tell me what you're preparing for. I love helping y'all. It's a lot of fun. So one of the pleasures that I have is teaching this material and teaching any material for that matter. I've been teaching for such a long time. It's part of my DNA. So I'm looking forward to doing this. In this study session, we're going to be going through some questions as well. So they're coming up in a few minutes. Now, listen, I am so excited for y'all because you may have heard me say it before, but the number one reason folks do not pass this exam or any other exam you're taking is because they actually never schedule and take it. So if you've scheduled it, if you're about to take it, if you're frantically studying, well then welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like videos if you like them, and give us some comments. Let us know what else we can do to help you. And we're excited to do that. Now, because that's such a big reason, one of the other reasons why I go live as much as I can is to kind of motivate y'all to schedule the exam and just take it. So obviously you can't pass it if you don't take it. So if y'all are scheduled within the next week or less, then those are the most likely to get out there and get started making sales. And, so I wish you the best of luck on this. I want to make sure that you are getting licensed. A huge level of anxiety occurs when folks are about to take it, then something comes up. Something always comes up. Let me just explain that as purely as I can. Life comes up. And so there's a lot of reasons to not do something just as much. There's a saying, when the pain to remain the same, exceeds remaining the same, and the pain to change seems a lot less painful, then you're going to take the pain to change. So keep all of these things in mind. It's so true. If you think you can't, you're going to find a reason why you can't and find the confirmation bias to figure that out, to validate that. And if you think you can, then you can. And the reality is sign up for that examination and let's do it. Remember, passing the exam is not the goal. And a lot of folks kind of vertically fragment things. And they say, well, I got to get through this thing first, and then I can worry about getting into the business. And I say that's not necessarily sound advice. I would say that you want to be prepared to understand that you're about to get into business, you're about to run your own business, and that's what the real estate license is going to allow you to do. And because you have that right to do that, you need to run it like it's a serious operation. Things like lead generation, understanding how to market yourself, understanding your sales process, understanding, sort of the technical aspects of the business, how brokerage fundamentally works. I'm sure most of you realize if you're in real estate courses now that the stuff you're learning in class has really little to do with what the actual business is like, which is very similar to a lot of things. There's a lot of theory that you're tested on that you may never use again. And then the more you elevate transactionally and do more deals, the more you'll start to see these things be more and more relevant. So just remember that it's not just about passing the exam. The goal should be to get licensed and either earning those commissions, buying your investment properties, building your portfolios, helping your family out, transitioning from one job to a career, doing these types of things. A good friend of mine that's one of the top producing agents in the Northeast basically says, and you can hear my dog's barking crazily. I'm sure it's an Amazon driver. Sorry about my dogs. But anyway, the reality is, it's about getting the license and being beyond that. And that's really what we want to do. We want to get to the next level. And so while you're studying for this, also start thinking about the next pieces. So my goal is to get you through this exam as quickly as possible so you can hopefully earn that first check in less time. All right. And sort of get into it, because a huge level of the drop-off of this business happens to be when you're licensed and you're not doing deals. And so you're learning how to do deals. You're learning how to craft your craft. It could take you, if you land at the wrong brokerage firm or at the wrong manager, it could take you another year, maybe two, and then there's burnout, and then you drop out. You've said, I've tried this. It just didn't work out for me. But did you really try it? Did you try it the right way? Were you mentored by somebody awesome? Life's about all of the mentors that we come across. And I also submit this to you. If you are hanging out with the average of 5 people, you become the 6th. And so if you're spending time with, 5 bozos, you're going to become the 6th bozo. If you hang out with a lot of folks that are go-getters, that are working towards things and highly motivated, and those that you become the 6th. So you want to continually think about that. Now, you might be in a situation where you can't really hang with the right people. Well, if that's the case, then, read books, do those kinds of things. Surround yourselves with the voices, whether it be an author, whether it be, a professional that you really are aspiring to be like, and get sort of, immersed in what they do and how they are and how they operate. Bet your bottom dollar the traits that they have, the characteristics that they're following, and all of the outputs are the same level of energy that they put into this examination as well. So there are fundamentals that I want you to look for, and let's go for it. Now, in this section, let's go through 10 questions. And in that, you're going to learn a decent amount of what's happening with your exam prep. So let's get into it without further ado. I'm going to give you the explanations and rationales, but let's jump into the questions, and here we go. All right, so question number 1. A buyer tells their agent that they would be willing to pay up to $25,000 more than their current offer if necessary to get the property. The listing agent later asks whether the buyer has room to increase their offer. What should the buyer's agent do? Letter A, disclose the buyer's willingness to pay more because it may help complete the transaction. Letter B, submit a new higher offer on the buyer's behalf, reflecting the $25,000 increase. Letter C, inform the listing agent that the buyer would likely accept a counteroffer up to $25,000 higher than the current offer. Letter D, keep the information confidential unless the buyer authorizes its disclosure. And the answer? Letter D, keep the information confidential unless the buyer authorizes the disclosure or its disclosure. Again, sorry about this. This is live, so no safety net here. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the answer, and just to make sure that you sort of have an explanation. It's always important to understand why the answer is the answer, and I think that that's pretty important. So the answer is D. Keep the information confidential. So the buyer tells us that they are willing to pay up to $25,000 more than their current offer if necessary to get the property. We're the buyer's agent, okay? So we are the buyer's agent in this scenario. Our fiduciary obligation is to the buyer. And even though the buyer is willing to pay more for it, we have to measure and balance their request to how they want to. Now, if they just say, look, just go up $25,000 in the offer, and that's what they tell you to do, then we follow the directive, right? And so that's another angle here as they're framing questions. But in this particular explanation, a client's negotiating position is confidential information, and a buyer's agent owes that fiduciary duty to the buyer and should not openly disclose the buyer's willingness to pay more unless the buyer specifically authorizes that disclosure. So if it's told specifically in the test question that the buyer authorizes the buyer's agent, then the answer is going to be, then we need to just disclose the $25,000, and there we go. But if it's not said like that, like they did in this particular question, then we want to make sure that we understand, and I'm just going to let you take a look at this question again. We want to make sure that we understand it. So there nowhere here is that. Now, a couple of little nuances here. Number one, it's kind of reading it. The best way to read questions like this that are sort of long-winded is to always start here. That's what I would do. I would read, what should the buyer's agent do? That's my question. I might even start with the answers sometimes and just read through them, looking for things that are incorrect, items that might not, jive, similarities in the answers, etc. And then I'm going to read the question. A buyer tells their agent they would be willing to pay up to $25,000 more than their current offer if necessary to get the property. The listing agent later asks whether the buyer has room to increase their offer. So the listing agent, this is thrown in there to confuse you because you're not sure whose position you're representing in the answers here. And then they say, well, then what should the buyer's agent do? So you see how they twisted this? It's very subtle, but it happens. And a lot of people, one of these answers might be based off of the listing agent. So that could be, the red herring. And so you want to read very carefully. And so why I tend to isolate what is the actual question is to avoid the traps that this test question obviously has. So that's a great question. Let's go on to the next one. Read them carefully. All right, question number 2. Two investors purchase a property together. One owns 75% and the other owns 25%. If one owner dies, their ownership interest passes to their heirs rather than the surviving owner. Which form of ownership best describes this arrangement? Letter A, joint tenancy. Letter B, tenancy in common. Letter C, tenancy by the entirety. Letter D, life estate. And the answer? Letter B, a tenancy in common. Okay, so these types of questions are very common. These are co-ownership forms: tenancy in common, joint tenancy, tenancy by the entirety, community property in the states where you guys are taking those, like California, for example. You want to know the definitions. You want to know how they break down and some of their telltale signs. This is for sure going to be on real estate exams for brokers and salespersons. You're going to see this. You just need to understand how this works. And so some of the items here are pretty important. Let's jump into them. So number 1, the answer is a tenancy in common. Well, how did we get there? The question gives you 2 big clues that point to the tenancy in common. And these are the 2 notes I would take down for a tenancy in common. The first clue was the owners have an unequal ownership interest. In the test question, one owns 75% and then the other owns 25%. So there's disproportionate ownerships. And that is one of the hallmarks of a tenancy in common. As a matter of fact, all the other ones are equal. If it's a joint tenancy, it's always going to be equal. And if it's a tenancy by the entirety, it's for married folks. And married folks are considered one entity and they own 100% of the entire property as one thing. And so therefore, the only form of co-ownership that allows for a disproportionate owner interest is a tenancy in common. So the minute I'm looking at that, I'm already validating it in my head going, okay, that's tenancy in common. I'm not going to pick that as the answer. Because again, I always like to start with the question, which form of ownership best describes this arrangement? Okay, so they're looking for what is this thing that they're describing in this interrogatory. So we already read the proportions of ownership, and that's fine. But then it goes on to say when one owner dies, their share goes to their heirs, not the other owner. So it goes to their estate, not to the other owner. Now, that's exactly how a tenancy in common works. So owners can own different percentages of the property, and there is no right of survivorship. That is like one of the biggest phrases that you just need to get down. If it were a joint tenancy, for example, the deceased owner's interest would automatically pass to the surviving owners, and all owners would typically have equal ownership interests. So whenever you see unequal ownership percentages or ownership passing to heirs, then think tenancy in common. Whenever you see the right of survivorship, think joint tenancy. Now, right of survivorship is a little bit counterintuitive. The right of survivorship means that when one co-owner dies, the ownership passes to the surviving owners, the right of survivorship. So think of it like this. We three own a property together. We have it as a joint tenancy. It all says this in the deed, by the way. So we own it as a joint tenancy. And so basically, once it says that, each of us owns equal amounts, so it's a third, a third, a third. When one of us dies, joint tenancies have the right of survivorship, which means that the other two co-owners absorb my ownership. Not to my estate does it go. So when it has no right of survivorship, it then goes to my estate. So when any form of co-ownership does not have right of survivorship, then it goes to your estate. And a lot of students, man, thousands of students mess this one up with right of survivorship. So you want to study this stuff. This is a great question, and this type of question you're going to see on that exam. I guarantee it. Let's get to number 3. So question number 3. At a local association meeting, several brokers agree that charging less than a 5% commission hurts the industry and agreed to maintain minimum commission rates. This arrangement is most likely, letter A, procuring cause. Letter B, market allocation. Letter C, price fixing. Letter D, designated agency. And the answer? Letter C, price fixing. All right. So this frame for question number 3 was trying to frame out a antitrust question. You're going to see these on the national portion of the exam, maybe even on the state portions of your examination. So that's what they're filling out here. And you're going to see it kind of brought this way. It's really telltale in the questions. When any time we're talking about like commission rates and groups of people sticking together, changing or agreeing to a number, as we should know, all commissions are 100% negotiable. Commission rates cannot be sort of unified through some of the big producers in an area. All of that is violations of the antitrust law, the Sherman Antitrust Act, huge penalties, state and federal law violations. And so for some particular instances, if it's really egregious, can be jail time for violating antitrust laws. So these are pretty serious laws, and they're doing this because they're trying to break up unfair trade practices and collusion between businesses, etc. And these are pretty serious offenses. So that now what we can do is we can start playing with the reverse here and start to look at what it couldn't be. Well, procuring cause is something, but it's setting up more when you're getting paid a commission. The real trick here is that they're throwing in words like commission, and procuring cause is stuff that you learn about during your courses, which has nothing to do with antitrust violations. Now, market allocation is an antitrust violation. Price fixing is an antitrust violation, but designated agency is just about agency. So this is something that's just absolutely, if the question is talking about, parties representing multiple parties at a transaction, one office, multiple buyer and seller, that kind of stuff. Well, that's designated agency. And then procuring cause is you are the cause of the deal closing. So that's procuring cause. Anyway, the answer here is price fixing. And I would have gotten to either B and C, and that would have been my 50-50 once I realized that this is one of those types of questions. Now, when competitors agree to set minimum prices, including commissions or maximum prices, then that's called price fixing, and it's a violation of antitrust. You want to know that, which is a big old violation. Now, the key is that the multiple competing brokers are collectively agreeing to control rates. Not one brokerage is setting its own policy, but competitors are coordinating to eliminate price competition. And so this should just reek of price fixing. This is a great question. These are the ones that you're going to see when it comes down to antitrust laws. This is the flavor of what you're going to see. Let's go to question number 4. An agent encourages families with children to focus on one neighborhood while suggesting that buyers without children consider a different area. This practice is known as letter A, redlining. Letter B, steering. Letter C, blockbusting. Letter D, puffing. And the answer? Letter B, steering. So these are classic. An agent encourages families with children. We already know when we're seeing phrases like encouraging families with children, focus on neighborhoods while suggesting that buyers without children consider different areas. This is already discriminatory, right? We're thinking discrimination, so you're already looking and considering that. Now, one of the tricks with discrimination questions is discrimination elicits strong reactions emotionally in readers. Test writers know that, so they're purposefully looking to confuse you, maybe confuse or conflate a phrase or a meaning, maybe put you up against the exemptions which you learn about, which are completely possible, and you want to sort out what the differences are. What is redlining versus what is steering versus what is blockbusting versus what is puffing? By the way, all of those are legitimate things that we do have to learn the definitions of. So this is one of those knowledge-based questions. They're playing the game, and you just want to know that this is the textbook definition of what they call steering. Now, so steering is when an agent guides buyers towards or away from certain neighborhoods based on protected class characteristics. In this particular case, the protected class is familial status and sort of, having the right to live with children under the age of 18 on a full-time basis. There are also exemptions, remember, like over 55 communities, etc. So do look at those exemptions. Now, even without saying anything overtly discriminatory, the pattern of direction is the violation. The agent doesn't have to refuse services. Just nudging people, which they were kind of doing in this particular question, towards different areas based on who they are is enough to qualify as steering. So you want to know all about these, especially redlining, steering, and blockbusting, because they're all fair housing violations that come up on examinations. Blockbusting is a big one for real estate agents, and therefore on state examinations, you'll see it as well. You want to know the state level penalties for violating antitrust law, discrimination laws, and you also want to know sort of the differences. Now, redlining is really the monetary one, not making a loan or insurance policies in areas for reasons other than economic qualifications, and blockbusting is also known as what they call panic selling. And so you want to definitely know those. Plus, they're very important, these phrases, to know about in the practice of real estate. So you might see them there. And then when you're actually, licensed, steering happens quite a bit. And there's a lot of testers that work for anti-discrimination divisions of the various states that you want to be careful about when they call on listings, et cetera, because they're looking to see if there's any of this steering happening or discriminatory practices. Good question. You're going to see these kinds of things happen, quite a bit in these scenarios. So let's go on to the next question. That's question number 5. And by the way, I am doing this live, so, there could be some flubs here, just by the way. I'm not perfect. I could mess up my presentation, but I'm going to try to read it to you as clearly and eloquently as possible. And, I want you also to do the same. So as you're practicing these questions, read through them, read out loud. You want to hear what your inner voice sounds like. Many times what I find is that even grammatical, issues, punctuation, etc., these things are often missed. So let's read this. Number 5, a seller signs an exclusive agency listing agreement. During the listing period, the seller independently finds a buyer without assistance from a broker. Assuming that the agreement contains standard exclusive agency terms, which statement is most likely true? Letter A, the seller must pay the listing broker a commission. Letter B, the seller owes a commission only if the property sells at or above asking price. Letter C, the seller generally does not owe the listing broker a commission because they procured the buyer themselves. Letter D, the buyer is responsible for paying the listing broker's commission. And the answer? Letter C, the seller generally does not owe the listing broker a commission because they procured the buyer themselves. So this is a standard scenario that you see. In agency with listings, the exclusive listing agreements are absolutely on exams. You want to know the exclusive right to sell, the exclusive agency. So you want to know those. It's a great opportunity to really sort of sort through them and to know definitionally how it works. So an exclusive right to sell means that if this is what was signed and that's what they talk about in this scenario, well then the listing agent gets paid no matter who sells the property, even if the seller themselves sells the property and in this example found a independent buyer without the assistance from a broker, then the listing agent would still be entitled to the full commission because in an exclusive right to sell, that's how it's written. And so again, this test question was saying things like, well, assume the agreement contains the standard exclusive agency terms, and it's defining it. It says this is an exclusive agency listing agreement. It doesn't say exclusive right to sell, by the way. If it instead said exclusive right to sell, then one of the answers indicating that the listing agent would still be entitled to a commission is then, the answer. Like D, the buyer is responsible. It's not the buyer, excuse me. The seller then owes a commission only if the property sells at or above asking price. That's not true. B is not correct. And A, the seller must pay the listing broker a commission. So letter A is a correct statement if this were an exclusive right to sell. I'm going to write EX right to sell. So if I were writing this question, if I put an exclusive right to sell, then the answer is A. And then if I put in the exclusive agency like that was said here, then the answer is C. The seller generally does not owe the listing broker a commission because the seller, independently found a buyer without assistance from a broker. It couldn't have been spelled out even more clear than that. And so assuming that the agreement contains the standard items, and nothing was further negotiated, by the way, which everything is negotiable, but the standard contracts have these provisions in them, well, then your answer all day is letter C. Great question, well crafted. I love it. And the only thing that I would also remember to do is I would read the question before I got into the interrogatory, before you get into the thick of it. So it would start here. Assuming that the agreement contains standard exclusive agency terms, which statement is most likely true? As a matter of fact, I would just even stick with which statement is most likely true. And now I can go, is this truthful? Is this not truthful? And then I can even just read the answers and say, well, which one of these is truthful? Which one of them are not? And then, bucket my answers that way so I can, increase my probability of guesswork if I had to take a guess here and I wasn't sure what to do. Good job. All right, next question. Question number 6. Which fiduciary duty requires an agent to place the client's interest ahead of their own? Letter A, accounting. Letter B, disclosure. Letter C, obedience. Letter D, loyalty. And the answer? Letter D, loyalty. All right, so loyalty means putting the client's interests first, even when it doesn't benefit the agent. So remember things like old car, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, reasonable care, accountability, or confidentiality and reasonable care, or cold AC, care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. These are all super popular. You want to know these? You're going to find these in the agency sections of your books. So definitely study these as you are getting in and preparing for this examination. You're going to see very simple questions like this, but they are very, very common, I would suggest, on examinations. So you definitely want to check these out. Question number 7. A real estate agent posts a listing on social media and describes the property as having 4 bedrooms, even though the public record and the seller's disclosure identify only 3 legal bedrooms. Which statement is most accurate? Letter A, the post is acceptable because social media advertisements are informal. Letter B, the post is acceptable if the agent believes the 4th room could be used as a bedroom and it has a closet. Letter C, the post may constitute false or misleading advertising. Letter D, the post is permissible as long as the seller or managing broker approves it. And the answer? Letter C, the post may constitute false or misleading advertising. Now, so something interesting that happened in this question, I'm just going to actually cut to it real quick. Look at this here. The question is, which statement is most accurate, right? Most accurate. Now, if you just read that question and don't read anything else, and then just kind of look at the answers. Well, if you read the answers, the post is acceptable because social media advertisements are informal. Wait a minute. We're talking about like a regulated industry, so I don't think that that's a correct statement. So it's not accurate. Letter B, the post is acceptable if the agent believes the fourth room could be used as a bedroom and it has a closet. That doesn't fly. So A and B are incorrect statements. These aren't accurate statements. And then look at letter D. The post is permissible as long as the seller or managing broker approves it. So like, wait, A, B, and D are very similar in their logic. So I would say like they're all positive and they're like the post is permissible. The post is acceptable. The post is acceptable. And then the only one that's the outlier is the post may constitute false or misleading advertising. So if you're just looking at the answers, it's like glaringly obvious like that there's one answer that's not like the others. And so before I even read the question, now I'm not just going to blindly pick, but I'm going to play this game a little bit and then I'm going to read the interrogatory. So that's my suggestion on questions like this, just to separate, the wheat from the chaff here. Now, we know that the post may constitute this because, if you're posting on social media that describes a property as having 4 bedrooms, even though the public record and the seller's disclosures identify only 3 legal bedrooms, okay. So we can't say it's a 4th bedroom with zero certainty, and so that we just simply can't do that. The only logical answer here is letter C. Lots of students miss on this, and you want to just remember it's a good one. Now, across most states, all real estate advertising, including, by the way, social media, must identify the brokerage in some way. That is always a fundamental piece that you want to know. We have to, if it's a salesperson advertising a listing, well, then we have to also identify who the broker is. An agent advertising independently without any brokerage affiliation it is generally considered a license law violation, regardless of the platform, including social media. Now, with that being said, one of the reasons why I love questions is because it's not just exam material. These things are real. Social media advertising is going to be real when you get into the industry, and lead generation is going to be real, right? So you have to know the advertising rules before you can start putting yourself out there. And speaking of advertising, let's talk about what it's actually for. Because, I'm always surprised when I meet agents who have been licensed for a year or two and have never even heard of things like sales funnels and stuff like that, the actual practice of generating business. So, and they're frustrated, right? Because, they post something on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn a couple of times and nobody calls them to list their house. They're just kind of twiddling their thumbs. It's low engagement, but that's not exactly how it works. People need to see your name and face over and over before they can even associate you with the world of real estate. So just because you put something out there and nobody responds to it doesn't mean anything. They need to continually see you as somebody that's in the space, as an expert, and you're building your brand by doing that. And again, it's like they don't even know who you are. And then now they need to get to know you. And then they're like, identify you as, hey, that's a real estate person. And, you keep doing that. So don't get frustrated, but you see it all the time. I'm sure you do as well. You have to build trust. You have to nurture relationships. And then when they're ready, they think of you, and then it's like sort of not a one-step process. So you have to be careful about all of that stuff. Now, I hate to tell y'all, but passing the exam is the easy part. You're never going to stop learning in this business. And the sooner you understand how things like lead generation actually work, the sooner you can start closing deals. So the good news is that you can even get a head start before you're licensed. Kato Fury, my business partner in these videos and the channel, and we've known each other for a very long time. One of her things is she is adamant on trying to help agents bridge the gap between the day one at the office and the examination, sort of that node, that void. And so she has a company called The Leading Agent, and it covers things like lead generation, setting up your CRM. She has a program. It's awesome. And it's very short and sweet. So very quick will you learn about those things like setting up the CRM and how to navigate your first transaction so you're not walking into your brokerage firm on day one completely in the dark. It's almost like the pre-training that happens before you start working with the broker. Just check the link in the description below. I'm going to drop it there. You should check out the Leading Agent program. It is amazing. And I highly support sort of its teachings, because the truth is, one of the big problems that I always see is that agents just aren't ready. And then they all take another 6 months to a year finding their footing where they could have learned all of these basic foundational fundamentals. The other thing that I like about her little program is that it's timeless. It's never going to go out of date. The information there will always be relevant no matter where technology is, no matter what's happening, including AI and everything else. It's going to be the fundamentals, and that's the stuff that's always going to make you continue to be able to generate money, especially in crazy tech times like this. The bottom line is, if you can be a human serving humans, you're going to do well. And this is great because this is the kind of program that helps people learn those things. So check it out. Let's get to the next question. Question number 8. A buyer submits an offer to purchase a property for $450,000. The seller changes the purchase price to $465,000, signs the document, and returns it to the buyer. Now, before the buyer responds, the seller receives a better offer. Which statement is most accurate? Letter A, a valid contract was created when the seller signed the offer. Letter B, the seller created a counteroffer and may revoke it before the buyer accepts. Letter C, the seller may withdraw the counteroffer only with court approval. Letter D, the buyer automatically has an option to purchase. And the answer? Letter B, the seller created a counteroffer and may revoke it before the buyer accepts. Okay, so there's a lot of twists and a lot of turns here. When a seller changed the price in the question, they rejected the original offer and they created at that moment a counteroffer. Definitely want to study contracts. Contracts is the biggest chunk of this examination. And these types of twists and turns are things that trip up students. Historically, I've seen it for year over year over year. So you really got to be careful here. This is a great time to just read the question and then carefully read the answers and then go in and read to try to find what's going on. Now, when we counteroffer, it's essentially a new offer. Until the buyer accepts, no contract exists and the seller is free to withdraw it or accept better offers. Again, there has to be a meeting of the minds. So an option, one of the answers, requires a separate consideration paid specifically to keep an offer open. So simply receiving a counteroffer does not give the buyer the option contract. So this is an excellent question. You want to make sure that you're reading things like this. Definitely study contracts. It is the most tested topic, in many instances up to 20% of the examination, and across the state portion of the exam, it just increases. It is very, very present on examination. So you want to know these things and offers and counteroffers and how they work. Question number 9. What is the primary purpose of a financing contingency in a purchase contract? Letter A, to allow the buyer to cancel if financing cannot be obtained under the agreed terms, Letter B, to guarantee the property appraises for the purchase price or higher. Letter C, to require the seller to provide financing. Letter D, to transfer the seller's mortgage to the buyer. And the answer? Letter A, to allow the buyer to cancel if financing cannot be obtained under the agreed terms. So financing contingencies, the big reason they exist is to protect the buyer by allowing them to exit the contract without losing their earnest money, their deposit. And if they can't secure a loan under the terms specified in the contract, typically things like rate, loan types, amounts, prevailing rates and terms, etc., then it's the buyer's protection, not a guarantee. If the appraisal comes in low or the lender says no, the buyer can get out of the contract without penalty. So you want to make sure you understand the different contingencies, the financing contingency, the property sale contingency, the appraisal contingency, the inspection contingency, radon contingency. You'll see all of these on examinations, and you want to know them, by definition. And this is a classic textbook definition of what the financing contingency in a purchase contract is. Question number 10. A seller agrees to sell their property but later refuses to close, even though the buyer has met all contractual obligations. Which legal remedy may allow the buyer to force the sale? Letter A, to a rescission. Letter B, liquidated damages. Letter C, specific performance. Letter D, adverse possession. And the answer? Letter C, specific performance. Okay, so a rescission is real, liquidated damages is real, specific performance is real, and adverse possession is another vocab phrase, has nothing to do with the contractual obligations. So if I were looking at this question and I'm reading the question of the interrogatory, which legal remedy may allow the buyer to force the sale? Well, I can already tell you that adverse possession isn't forcing any sale necessarily. It's the ability for a private party to be able to acquire land when they openly, continuously, notoriously occupy the land. So that's like what adverse possession is. Squatter's rights. So I would kick that out. Now I'm looking at, the rescission. To rescind a transaction means to go back to square one and everybody gets their money back. Liquidated damages simply means money damages. And then specific performance is a definition. So with specific performance is the answer. It is a court order that forces a party to fulfill the terms of a contract. And it's unique to real estate because every property is considered one of a kind. No two parcels of land can occupy the same space at the same time, meaning that money alone may not be adequate compensation in some conditions. Unlike liquidated damages, which is basically money damages, specific performance says, no, we want the actual house. And so this is a real estate or a specific item, a kind of a provision. And so you want to know the definition of what specific performance is. It is very popular when it comes down to exams. And again, this is another contract style question. So this is definitely stuff that you want to know, and you definitely want to be able to go, okay, here we go. What do I need to know? Another section for contracts that we have to sort of adhere to. All right. So there was 10 questions. Hopefully you found some use in them. These were well crafted and they were longer winded questions. So you want to read through them and understand the basics and the nuances. Remember, not all of this stuff is knowledge. It's also analysis and it's application of concepts. So it's not just the knowledge. It's many times it's the other two pieces where students kind of get painted into corners. So hopefully you found these questions helpful. They were deliberate when they were crafted to be able to talk about those things. I want to go through just a few tips for the exam, and then I'm going to wrap up our session because, we're going a pretty decent amount. I hope you guys are finding some value in this. If you are, let us know in the comments, and we will continue to put these types of trainings out. We love doing them, by the way. I'm getting back into doing live sessions and stuff like that, so it's a lot of fun for me. So, thank you very much for kind of egging me on to get back in it. All right. So I know a lot of you guys are taking the exam within a few days, and some of you are going to be taking it as soon as tomorrow, as I mentioned before. So I wanted to leave you with a few exam day tips that I think can make a big difference in your outcome. So tip number 1, read every question and every answer choice twice. One of the biggest mistakes that students make is reading too quickly. Pay special attention to words like, not, except, always, never, and best. Exam writers love to hide those words in questions. Commas are also a big thing as well. And missing a single word, as many of y'all can see, can completely change the correct answer, like with the exclusive agency listing versus the exclusive right to sell that we talked about in one of those questions. All right, so definitely read everything twice. Tip number 2, don't get stuck on one question. If you're the testing center allows it, which most of them do. You're going to mark difficult questions and then come back to them later. You don't want to spend 5 minutes grappling with one question only to run out of time and miss the next 3 or 4 easy questions at the end that you would have answered correctly and you were rushed. Get the points you know you can get first, then come back and fight the tougher battles later. Tip number 3, use process of elimination. You watched me do it live just a few moments ago. Even if you don't know the answer immediately, start eliminating choices that are clearly wrong. If you can eliminate at least one answer, you've improved your odds significantly from 25% to 33%. If you can eliminate 2, and you can go to even better, right? So the odds improve. And now you're looking at a 50-50 decision. That's a huge advantage over randomly guessing. So if you're going to play the guessing game, well, guess intelligently. There's technique to guessing, right? All right. Tip number 4, trust your preparation and avoid changing answers. Man, I see this all the time with my private, coaching clients. They always second guess themselves. It's a huge problem. A lot of folks will do that when they're thinking through things. They'll guess or they'll second guess and stuff like that. Pick an answer. Most students that I come across know their theory well. It's just the application and sort of the analysis pieces that they're missing. It's actually a different part of your brain that doesn't get as much activity and work as the part of your brain that understands and retains knowledge, by the way. And there's cross-wiring with your amygdala and sort of how the brain works, which is why you see a lot of students fail, by the way. I've been doing this for a very long time, so I know the patterns. So a lot of students start second guessing themselves during examinations. So if you've studied, practice questions, and your first answer was based on something you actually knew, be careful about changing it. Many students talk themselves out of the correct answer and into the wrong one. Change an answer only when you can identify a specific reason why your original answer was incorrect. And that will serve you well. Hopefully all of those tips are something that you're going to find useful. Remember this, pause the video, write them down. I'm telling you, these are some pretty classics that aren't going to get old. Anything you take, anything you do, these are going to serve you well. Now, for those of y'all who do have a little bit more time before your exams, or if you're realizing that there's still a lot of material you don't feel completely confident about, then quickly check out our real estate masterclass. It is awesome. It's the program that people take when they want to pass the exam, filter through everything that's non-essential. I cut it down to only the 20% of things that you really need to know. So, what do you really need to know about agency? What do you really need to know about the contingencies? What do you really need to know about this or that? And I filter it down very, very methodically. We have plenty of support with questions and notes and everything else. It's killer. The object of building that program, by the way, was to get you passing faster, to get you learning the materials faster so you can focus on the things that are gonna show up, which are higher probability. Again, my targeting system for doing this for 30 years is that I can target this stuff. I can go within a range of understanding that it could be this, it could be that. If I were them, I'd do this. And typically that targeting system has proven pretty successful. And sort of that's what the masterclass is about. Check it out. It's on sale actually right now. So you might be able to pick it up on a sale. If you are interested, reach out to us through email, and we'd be happy to tell you more about it. If you have questions, drop them in the comments, and we'll answer them. I stand by that product. I think it's killer. The students that have purchased it, there are so many that have. They all have the same awesome things to say. And I'm very honored about that. It's 30 years of my experience that we distilled into a very simple, time-efficient way to study. That's it. Okay, so check it out. The reality is that the masterclass is that focus where we are saying, look, cut through all of this 600-page book, focus on this, this, and this, and it's going to save you hours and hours of wasted time studying. We cover topics like contracts, agency, property ownership, financing, fair housing calculations, and test-taking strategies. But the most important thing is that we help you understand what you actually need to know to pass. So if you're looking for a more structured study plan, additional practice questions, detailed explanations, I go into 200 questions and give you one of these for 200 questions, step-by-step system, paint by the numbers, call it what you will. It's a killer product and you should check it out. There's a demo on our, and I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check it out. And if you have any questions, we'll see you soon. All right, look. Thank you very much for hanging. Thank you very much for learning. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about certain topics, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And we are going to see you very soon with another live training. I wish you well, study hard, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for subscribing to our channel and supporting us. And we appreciate the opportunity to support you. And let us know when you're passing. I love the comments. It makes me feel great. It makes our team feel great. Thank you once again, and we'll see you very, very soon.